G'day, I'm Steve Menzies. Kenneth Richard Arthurson is player number 59 to play first grade for the Manly Warringah Seagulls, and one of the most influential people ever in the history of our game. Peter Peters was lucky enough to catch up with Arko and delve into his illustrious career both on and off the field and the amazing legacy that this man has left at our club. Sit back and enjoy this 4-part series.
And here's the man himself, the great Ken Arthurson. Ken, welcome. Let's start at the beginning. You're born in Glebe in Sydney on October the 1st, 1929. 10 years younger than you is your sister Jean, who was later to become a high achiever as Mayor of Manly for many years. You move from the eastern suburbs where you lived, and you go to school at North Bondi Primary and then Randwick Boys High School.
That's true, yeah.
And then you moved with your mum and dad and your sister to the Northern Beaches, and you go to Manly Boys High School.
That's right, yeah, exactly.
You joined Freshwater Surf Club, and that's where your love of rugby league begins.
Yeah, well, I played with Freshwater Surf Club in D grade. Both Roy Bull and I were playing together at that stage of the game. That was under 16 competition, yes.
How ironic that you go to school with Roy Bull at Manly Boys High, you play rugby league with him at Freshwater Surf Club, where incidentally you were the beach sprint champion at a very young age. And Roy goes on to become Manly's first local junior to wear the green and gold of Australia.
Oh, look, he was a terrific forward, Roy, absolutely fearless. And he actually played first grade at the age, I think, of 18.
In the front row?
In the front row, yeah. And he never took a backward step.
No, he certainly did.
No, he really didn't.
The colours of Freshwater Surf Club are synonymous with the Seagulls because the maroon and white you're wearing now comes out of Freshwater Surf Club.
Well, it does. We used to say at Freshwater Surf Club, they've taken our colours, and they did, actually. Yeah, they really did.
So you join Freshwater Surf Club, you play in their premiership-winning side that won the President's Cup, and that was a real help for Manly to enter the New South Wales Rugby League in 1947.
Yeah, I think it was actually the 1946 President's Cup team that was instrumental in us getting admitted into the grade ranks. I didn't play. I was not old enough to play on that 1946 side, but I think them winning the competition was the instrumental in us getting into the competition in 1947.
What an achievement that was at that time.
Well, it really was, and they were a great team, Manly, and they did a terrific job. And of course, as I say, by winning that was instrumental in us getting into the grade ranks.
Okay, so what are your early memories of Brookvale Oval in 1947 when the side entered the New South Wales Rugby League competition?
Well, Brookvale Oval at that time just had a huge racetrack around it, and of course the stands that are there now weren't there, obviously, and it was because I can remember playing South Sydney there, and they were absolutely packed around, sitting on the sidelines, and I can always remember we led in the last closing minute of the game. And South Sydney were awarded a free kick. And Johnny Graves was kicking for Souths at the time. And the try they scored was right in the corner. And to kick the goal, he had to move the crowd so that he could get back to take the steps up to kick the ball. And you wouldn't want to know, but he's kicked it from the sideline, and they've got up and beat us by a point, yeah.
Okay. Now, North Sydney, who were to become our arch enemies, were not our enemies in those days. In fact, North Sydney helped greatly in Manly being able to enter the major competition.
Yeah. Well, look, I've always been a supporter of North Sydney. I mean, I think they were a good club, and I've always had a great regard. I was very, very sorry to see them go out of the league, to be honest.
You make your first grade debut in 1950, and you played 41 games between 1950 and 1952, and Manly makes its first grand final at the SCG, and you're the halfback in that side.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's an incredible achievement, isn't it?
Well,
For a side that's so young to make a grand final so quickly.
it was. It was a tremendous effort on Manly's part. And as a matter of fact, I can recall the season very well. St George played Souths in the semi-final, who were the minor premiers, and they beat Souths. And we played Wests, and we beat Wests, and then met St George in the final. We beat St George, and we of course, but in beating St George, we had some terrible injuries for the following week when we played Souths in the grand final, because in those days the minor premiers had the right of reply. So Souths were still in the grand final, and we had a depleted side, really. Wally O'Connell, for example, was our captain and a terrific player, and he was unable to play, and other players played that were, they weren't really 100% fit. But that's not taking anything away from South, because they were a great team and they deserved to win, and they won the competition. They beat us that day, and that was, it was a devastating blow, because I thought after beating St George, we were going to be pretty hard to beat.
It's a long time ago, 1951, but it was an achievement that I find it's almost like climbing Everest. It's so hard to fathom that this young club, with a locally produced halfback in yourself, made a grand final after just 5 seasons in the competition against teams that have been in since 1908.
Yeah, well, it was a pretty good effort, and but look, it was mainly attributed, I think, to Wally O'Connell,
who was an international and a kangaroo captain,
and a great player. As a matter of fact, when I was young, going to school, Wally was my idol. As a matter of fact, I used to follow Eastern Suburbs because he played for East at that time. So wherever they played, I went to watch him play, and to have the honour and distinction to play with a man of his calibre later on was a terrific boost for me.
Well, Manly signed him as a captain coach, I recall, and because of the residential rule, he still lived in the eastern suburbs, they wouldn't let him play.
No, they wouldn't let him play the first year. That's right, exactly right.
Okay. You leave Manly after just 41 games, which a lot of people would find incredible. But in those days, and you had high hopes for yourself as a rugby league halfback, you wanted to go all the way. Explain how you ended up at Parks as captain coach. You left Sydney with £5 in the bank. That's all you had. Well,
that was really the deciding factor. I'd just been married at the time, and of course we didn't have any money. I think we had £5 in the bank. Was exactly how it was, and we were offered £400 to go, and I was offered £400 to go and play in Parks, which was a heap of money in those days. So it was pretty difficult for us not to do it. And
you also wanted to crack
and also
rep football.
I did, and the country coach at that time asked me to go and play in the country because he certainly had me in mind to play for country, and so I did. I went to Parks, and of course, I was injured up there it was a representative game actually, and the Western District team was named that night, and I was named as captain of that team, but of course I was in hospital.
Well, you were 3 months in hospital.
Yeah, well they did.
There was a period where they feared for your life.
Yeah, well, I was very, very fortunate, actually. I got this, it was a freak accident, I got this 10-inch depressed skull fracture, and, had any of the fragments of bone gone into the brain coverage, it would have win the ball game. And but I was fortunate. I got through it okay, and I still got a bit of a dented head. But other than that, I was very fortunate to get through it. And
So at 23 years of age,
yeah.
your career was over.
Oh, look, it absolutely broke my
and you
heart.
lived for the game.
I mean, it was nice to still be associated with the game as I was and continue to be, but there's no fun like playing, and I missed it enormously. Yeah, I really did. Yeah.
You returned to Manly as third grade coach.
Yeah.
And that was in 1954. Reserve grade coach in 1955 and 1956. And then you become first grade coach from 1957 to 1961.
Yeah.
And you were the youngest coach and still are the youngest coach to coach first grade in the major competition.
Yeah, well, I heard that recently on radio, and I was surprised to hear that. But I was 27 when I started coaching Manly first grade. The year before, I'd coached the reserve grade, and we got through to the grand final, and we lost it. And of course, I coached Manly for the next 5 years after that, in which we made 2 grand finals, lost both of them, of course, I might add. So, I don't know whether it was my bad coaching or I was.
Well, every year you coach first grade, Manly made the finals. And as you said, 2 grand finals, 57, 59.
Yeah, well, we did. We 57 and 59, and we were unfortunate enough to be up against St George when they had that great team.
They had that wonderful run, didn't they?
Oh, they won all those premierships in a row. Matter of fact, they had players in their reserve grade that were probably good enough to be in it. And certainly a couple were internationals,
It ignited a fire in your belly, though, didn't it, that you desperately wanted a premiership at Manly?
I was desperate to win a comp for Manly,
Yeah. In 1962, you become treasurer and secretary in 1963. Jack Munro, who was a great servant of Manly.
He was, yeah.
And you had a background in accountancy.
Yep.
You actually did your intermediate at 21 years of age because you wanted...
My leaving certificate.
Your leaving certificate, yeah.
Yes, I did.
Your background in accountancy held you in good stead during all your years as secretary of Manly.
Yeah, well, I suppose it did to some extent. It certainly helped. It's no load to carry, that was for sure, yeah.
Frank Facer from St George was the first full-time secretary.
Yep.
And Ken Arthurson was the second.
Yeah, that's right.
And you forged a fantastic career. 20 successful years as secretary of Manly. You quickly established yourself as one of the most successful administrators of your time. In 20 years as secretary, Manly played in 8 grand finals, winning 4 in 1972, 1973, 1976 and 1978. Manly played in 15 final series during your 20 years as boss.
Yeah, well, it was a really good effort. Not necessarily on my part, but the players that participated and those that coached them at that time, they did a terrific job. And Manly were probably recognised as, if not the strongest, certainly one of the strongest teams in the premiership.
You left no stone unturned to bring that title across the harbour and Spit Bridges.
I was absolutely desperate because, as I said before, I'd coached Manly into the grand final twice, and we'd played in several others after that and just been beaten. And I was absolutely desperate for.
You knew what it was like to get beaten.
Oh, absolutely, and I must say it's more fun to win than get beaten. I can assure you of that. But I was determined that somehow or other for us to get through and win a premiership.
The build-up to 1972 and the club's first title was a long and frustrating process as Manly were tagged the bridesmaids. We hated that tag. 6 years earlier, you made a significant signing when you went to Wollongong to watch a reserve grade grand final between Wests and Port Kembla. After the game, soon after it, you signed a 17-year-old 5'8" named Bob Fulton. How significant was that in your master plan to win a first title?
Look, I saw Bob Fulton, as you say, play. I saw him first play when he was 16, and I could see that he had it. You know, he was a terrific player. In fact, I've been asked over the years who's the best player I've ever seen, and it's always difficult to say that, you know, Gasnier or Churchill or Raper or Fulton, who was the best player. But my personal favourite has always been Bob Fulton. He just had that incredible knack of being able to turn a game at any given time, and he was one of the first four people named
As an immortal.
as an immortal, and he. But as I say, you know, I mean, Churchill, Gasnier, Rape, and himself, they were the first four named. But Bob Fulton has always been my favourite player. I've seen him turn a game on that many occasions. It's just remarkable. He really was a fantastic player, and he just didn't know how to not do his best. Bob, he was one of those blokes.
What satisfaction did it give you, and right throughout your career, of when you signed young players and then they become a great player? And every now and then, and probably once in a lifetime, you get a young man that becomes an immortal of our game. I mean, the satisfaction it must give you must give you the just the biggest thrill.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. You know, for any Manly player to have been chosen in higher selection was always a big boost to me. But some of the players that I've got to come and play with Manly that have gone on and made enormously great names for themselves, it really, you know, I suppose, you know, I'd be a funny bloke if it didn't give me a bit of satisfaction. It certainly did.
Fulton would become almost like a son to you.
Oh, he's been like a son to me. I just, you know, I really care about the bloke.
That's nice. You built a side around him, really, didn't you? Because you didn't leave any stone unturned. You got players from England, you got players from other clubs, which you were criticised for. In the lead up to 1972 and the historic grand final win under skipper Fred Jones, you built a really juggernaut of a side. John O'Neill and Ray Brannigan from Souths, the great Ken Irvine from North Sydney, Graham Eadie, the Wombat from Woy Woy. What a fullback. And a fiery, skillful young Englishman named Malcolm Reilly from Castleford. You built a great side, Ken.
Yeah, well, the other player too that played a big part in that was Phil Lowe from England.
Yeah, he played after 74.
Yeah, I saw him and Malcolm Reilly play when I was over in England with the Australian team, and I thought, geez, I'm going to see about trying to get those blokes over to Manly, which fortunately I was able to do. And they were just outstanding players, and we won premierships whilst they were in those teams too.
Manly League's club erupted on that Saturday in September 1972 as the fans who had waited 25 years celebrated. I remember people on top of poker machines. The lineup outside the club went on forever. The place never stopped partying for days after. It was all worthwhile, wasn't it?
Oh, it certainly was. It was, you know, as I said earlier, it was something that had really become a big thing in my mind. I was desperate for us to win a premiership because we'd been so close to winning and not quite making it that I was just desperate for us to actually win a title, and for us to do it on that first occasion, I know it was probably one of the greatest feelings I've ever had in the game.
Well, you didn't have to wait long for the next premiership. It came the next year as Manly went back to back in one of the most brutal grand finals in the history of the game, and it was your adopted son, Bob Fulton, who was the difference in that game. 2 tries, 2 brilliant tries, and that was the difference in a 10-7 win over Cronulla.
Oh, well, no, he was a terrific. We'd played Cronulla in the semi-finals and we'd beaten them quite easily. We'd beaten by probably 15 or 20 points. And people just thought it'd be a similar walkover in the grand final, but Tommy Bishop had really geared his players up, and actually they put on a blue, you know. And
did they what?
Well, you should know, yeah. And we were silly enough to fight back instead of playing football, but so
that was the only way I think they could have beaten us.
Well, it was the only way,
and that's what they employed.
And look,
it nearly came off.
Well, I know it nearly came off. I know we employed the same tactics when I went to England as manager of the team. The English team at that time was that they just annihilated everybody, and of course, but we got through to the final because we'd had a big win against New Zealand in Wigan during the series, and we got them, we kidded them into a bit of fighting, and whilst they were fighting and getting around it, we got up and won the game.
That was in the World Cup.
That was in the World Cup.
Yeah. In the 70s, and Manly had great success in the 70s. It was a decade where Manly fans just couldn't believe their eyes and watch this great side go around and win premierships. You made sure, though, that there was a good mixture of local juniors. Something started back in the 40s, really, when your mate Roy Bull became Manly's first local junior, as we mentioned earlier, to play for Australia. And that was, players there came through our junior ranks and played for Australia as well as winning premierships for Manly.
Yes, but see, that's the whole point at issue, and that's what I tried to hopefully got over to people, that by getting those players in, it developed our players with them.
Mm-hmm.
And, players like
Terry Randall,
Ian
Martin, Alan Thompson,
all of
Max Krilich, captain of Australia.
Fred Jones, all those players playing with good players, developed them. Had we not got them, they may not have developed like that.
Well, that's where we're going to have to leave it for part 1 of the series of Zorba and Arko. Please tune in next time as we continue the discussions with Ken Arthurson, the legend that is the godfather of Manly.